Hi, everybody, and a very warm welcome to everybody participating in today's webinar. Today's event is the second in a series of ESOA workshops, which we have themed Global Challenges, Satellite Answers. And I'm thrilled to be joined by our panelists today, John Omo, Secretary General of the African Telecommunications Union, Jean-Jacques Massima, Regional Representative of the ITU for Central Africa and Madagascar, Amir Cohen, Vice President of Marketing and Business Development from Gilat Telecom, and Daniel Schapiro, Sales Director for Africa, SES Networks. We are going to get right into the discussion. We have a lot of important issues that we would like to cover today, but I would invite our attendees to please share their questions on the chat. But when you do so, please make sure you select all panelists and attendees. We will do our best to get through them, time permitting. We're also going to be recording this session and we will make it available on our website very soon. Okay, so we are living at a time when the need to be connected could not be clearer. But we also know that millions don't have internet access at all. Governments, international and regional organizations, private organizations are all working to make that gap a little bit smaller every year. But how long do close to 3 billion people have to wait until they too can be part of the digital era? Today, we're going to hear the transformational story of how, after years of struggling with limited 2G for only 2% of its population, the Democratic Republic of Congo has finally made a breakthrough, now connecting around 25 million people to 4G, thanks to next generation satellite technology. So, John, allow me to start with you. Aarti's mission is to accelerate the development of telecoms and ICTs in Africa to achieve digital economies. How do you see the role of satellite in Africa, and what is Aarti doing to foster and enhance this role? John, can you unmute? John, you're on mute. We can't hear you.
All right, can you hear me now?
Yes, that's better.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much, Aarti, for the question. My name is John Omo. I work for the African Telecommunications Union as the Secretary General. And indeed, satellite is at the core of connectivity in Africa. And that can be summarized in essentially one word. It is crucial. In various parts of Africa, indeed, a number of large swaths of Africa, satellite has been and still remains the only means of connectivity in highly critical areas such as, rural connectivity, natural resource protection and conservation, defense. The satellite TV, for example, in Africa is clearly still where satellite remains key. And in our view, the bigger question then becomes what we are doing to foster and enhance this role. So for us at the African Union, satellite remains the core and one of the primary connectivity medium in Africa for which policy interventions, regulatory approaches need to be conducive enough to ensure their availability. I'll come back in a short while just to talk about what we are doing at the ATU in terms of ensuring that satellite technology is, the role of satellite technology is enhanced in Africa accordingly. But just to answer your question, satellite remains crucial in terms of connectivity in Africa, because in most areas, indeed, the DRC, for example, which we are discussing today, is like a subcontinent in Africa, and with various parts that are still not connected in terms of terrestrial links, satellite remains the only and indeed the means of communicating in those regions. Thank you very much. Over to you.
John, can you just say something about what Aarti is doing to foster the use of satellite communications in Africa? Because I know you're taking some very important initiatives.
Thank you very much. I thought I would reserve that for a short while to come, but a couple of steps have been taken towards ensuring that satellites remain at the core of connectivity initiatives in Africa. In 2016, for example, we developed a draft recommendation on harmonized approach to domestic licensing and mutual license recognition at sub-regional level of Earth stations in motion, commonly known as ESIMs. And we are currently working with the sub-regions to consider adopting those recommendations. Why the sub-regional economic communities? Because some of the elements addressed by the RECs include mutual recognition of licensing and taxation protocols. So we think that involving the regional economic communities is a sure way of ensuring that we have a bottom-up approach to the issue. The second thing is there's actively an ongoing study on satellite resources for Africa and developing strategy for optimum acquisition and retention of satellite resources in this continent. So that study is ongoing. We are actively undertaking the development of harmonized model framework for licensing of satellites in Africa. It is expected that that framework would also cater for ESIMs as an example. Fourth is an action plan on ICT sector, COVID-19 response, in which one of the long-term action items is coordinating the efforts to harness the potential of emerging technologies such as IoT and 5G to improve lives in Africa. And in that regard, next week we will commence work on developing recommendations on 5G implementation in Africa, as well as other forms of emerging technologies, such as hubs, such as ESIMs, such as MSS. So we remain hopeful that these initiatives will foster and enhance the role of satellites in Africa. In fact, increasingly, the satellite industry has seen the role that ATU plays in this regard, and we are having a number of satellite organizations interested in our activities, and we're in discussions with them in that regard. So just to mention those 4 initiatives for now that we are taking as a union in terms of enhancing the role of satellites in connectivity in Africa. Over to you.
Thank you, John. And I must say, we really appreciate the efforts that you're making. And ESOA members, I know we have put forward experts to work with you in some of those areas.
Sure.
So
sure.
Coming then to Jean-Jacques and the ITU, we know, Jean-Jacques, that Connecting Africa is high on the global political agenda right now. Africa is already the leader in digital banking. It's the fastest growing telecoms market on the planet, but it's still also got 100 million people living in remote areas outside the reach of mobile networks. Central Africa, which you're in charge of, with its landlocked countries, of course, have specific challenges. How is the ITU regional representation supporting connectivity initiatives across this region in particular?
Thanks. I'd like first to thank John and to say as an introduction that the use of satellite is not an option for Africa. It is mandatory. If you are speaking of landlocked countries, for example, these landlocked countries in my region are characterized by 2 sides. You have big, wide landlocked countries like DRC, we are speaking about Central African Republic and Chad, and you have small landlocked countries like Burundi, Rwanda, and so on. So that very wide use of satellite is therefore necessary to tackle the issue of connectivity in the region. So what ITU is doing, of course, is just following up for the connections, what we call the priority interconnection of Central African countries, which was a very important and huge project launched by the World Bank at the time, where we were trying to have all the capitals of the main countries in South Africa linked by optical fiber networks. And for those where the capital is very far away from the borders, of course, the use of satellite in order to have no missing link. So this huge CAB project is going very well, despite some political facts in Central African Republic, for example, the political instability, which has delayed the projects. But we can now point out the incredible experience that a country like Chad is now connected from Atlantic Sea to the Red Sea and will be connected in a few years to the Mediterranean Sea by these optical networks coming from Cameroon to Sudan from one leg, and going from Chad to Niger to Algeria to Mediterranean for the other leg. But when you see the mapping of connectivity is using both satellites, and optical fiber networks. And this is very important to say, but this is an engineering of the networks, which is very important to make have a part of the satellite use in some rural areas, but also in some capitals in the region where bringing optical fiber is very costly. Now, why we need this? Because of course, we should take into account and bear in mind the affordability of the connectivity, which is the only way we can address this connectivity issue. If you provide a solution which is very expensive in our regions and rural areas, then nobody can afford these solutions, and we will keep the same level of people non-connected. So you are true to say that a lot of people are not connected, but now we are counting on some wireless broadband networks around these areas, connected to the main highways, and even from satellite, you have SOS, GLAT, and some others, using even RASCOM rural area satellite solutions to try to have these people more and more connected. And as my friend John was speaking of the COVID response, of course, yes, one of the answer to have these people going to schools by virtual means, try to not stop and block the economy of the countries. Yes, the response to the COVID is the use of these satellite means and these optical fiber roads in order to have more people connected at an affordable price.
That's great. Thank you, Jean-Jacques. Daniel, coming to you, the SES is a global satellite operator. You work in many countries, services to millions, including in the Central African Republic, Chad, and elsewhere. Can you capture for us SES's journey in connecting the DRC?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you, Aarti, and thank you everybody that joined this session. SES launched the first O3B satellites in 2013. The O3B constellation is the first high throughput satellite constellation with low latency. And we launched it in 2013. And already by 2014, we were up and running in DRC. Actually, we are very proud to say that DRC was the first country in Africa to get O3B, and actually the second one in the world. We started with a relatively small deal for HTS of 400 megabits, and it was very successful from day one. Gradually, we started growing in our teleport capabilities and growing in the capacity. We partnered with Gilat. Gilat is one of our largest partners all over the world, and especially in Africa. And one of the reasons for the success we had is for the high professionalism that they did in deploying the systems. So we started again with 400 megabits. And today, sorry about that. We started with 400 megabits and in only one city in Kinshasa, the capital. And gradually we started expanding both in bandwidth and in presence to other places. We continued by setting up services in Lubumbashi, which is like 2,500 kilometers away from Kinshasa. And nowadays we started activities also in Bunia, in Mbuji-Mayi, and in Kisangani. All in all, today we have about 6 gigabits of bandwidth in DRC, which is a very large amount of bandwidth. One of the advantages of O3B, and one of the reasons why we're able to grow so significantly in DRC and in other places, is the high quality of services that we provide. We regard bridging the digital divide, not only as providing capacity to customers, but providing to them first-class capacity. With the use of low latency solutions as the ones that we provide, we allow the MNOs, who are the main vehicle of connectivity for the African population, to get, for the customers to get the best possible kind of connectivity that they can get, which is well comparable to connectivity that they would get in the US, in Europe, or in any highly developed society with a lot of fiber. And they can get that in DRC anywhere where O3B has a reach currently. Our main customers through Gilat in DRC are the MNOs and enterprises and NGOs and everybody that can get that type of connectivity.
Excellent. Thank you, Daniel. It's great to hear what SES is doing. We're going to move to Gilat Telecom, but we're going to start by showing a video where we can see the CEO of Gilat Telecom speaking. So before we come to you, Amir, I invite the organizers to show the video.
For us, we saw an unlocked demand in the DRC for high-speed internet. Together with O3B, we came to the DRC and we deployed the services. And since then, we see that once they are introduced to this high level of service, they keep increasing their demand. We see a double-digit growth from 2016 up to now. We are now in the range of 5 gigabit of capacity that we are providing the DRC, and we see it keep growing.
Amir, you're going to tell us more. We know that Gilat Telecom offers both satellite and fiber-based solutions, and we know that connecting rural low-income communities is a significant commercial challenge. But your partnership with SES and telecoms giants like Orange and Vodacom is growing. Now, this is not a pilot. It doesn't even have donor or public funding. It's pure business. So with the low ARPUs in Africa, how is it that connecting rural communities in places like DRC is profitable for these kind of global companies?
Oh, okay. Thank you very much for the question. Thank you very much for letting me join your panel. In Africa, for almost a decade, the mobile operators are also acting as a finance bank. Instead of using the credit cards or cash, the local resident, especially in the rural, are using mobile money. So not only using data or making calls, but also buying food, sending money to each other, receiving salary. So it's a strong motive for the mobile operator to have a coverage in all of the country. Saying that, it's also have a competition, Vodacom, Orange, Africell, and in order to be unique, so they come with in order to compete the geo with the geo and the fiber, we come up with the solution together of the O3B, which means you don't need infrastructure, you don't need terrestrial fiber, you just put a teleport wherever you want in the rural, and you get a high throughput, a very good quality of service, and it gives you a benefit in compared to the other competitors, other MNOs. So if you have the advantage, then all of them can join your company and getting, you're getting the mobile money. So it's a very good motive to attract the rural resident with a unique solution of data, of delivering data. Back to you. You're on mute.
Forgive me. Thanks for that, Amir. It's quite amazing, we have this, we have a huge digital divide, but we actually have a solution and we see that it works. So clearly, we need to see more of these connectivity solutions in Africa. Jean-Jacques, let me ask you, what can be done to support more successful partnerships like the one we see between Gilat and SES in DRC? How can we bring these kind of successful partnerships also to other African countries?
Yes, thanks, sure. The design of the new engineering systems and so on must be done and elaborated in taking into account the PPP, public partnership, and private, of course, partnership. You see, IT was encouraging in all the countries to try to have this 3P working more. And of course, it's not to try to say that, okay, there's no more transparency in the competition between those operators. No, it's that, okay, some of them are providing solutions, some others don't. So You have to put everyone in the boat and try to take benefit from this partnership without disturbing the competition spirit and transparency. So you have some needs. For example, if you need to address some broadcasting issues in some rural regions and so on, which you can find in an operator, not with another one. So I think this kind of partnership is encouraged by ITU and with some concrete solutions and satisfactory impact from the users. I think there's no problem for that. ITU is encouraging this, and with ATU, I think the framework ATU is designing, John will speak about it, is trying to put everyone in a position where they can propose the most affordable service they can with an appropriate technology. Because you see, for example, John was saying, in terms of broadcasting, if you see all the CanalSat receivers and so on, each time you have a small rain in the country, you are cut because we are using the C-band. Everyone knows what the problem is. But now the commercial side of it is to have everyone accessing these championships, European League and so on, soccer clubs, things. But now this leisure is there. Now when you are tackling issues like education, to try to make some e-learning programs in rural regions and so on, or e-health programs and so on, these cannot be addressed by leisure things. You are operating someone and you need a reference hospital and a professor to lead the surgery in a region. You cannot accept cutting of a link during this intervention, for example. And to say in DRC, for example, of course, if you were to see that, okay, you have some very nice and good important companies mining in Kisangani and the other areas and so on, linked to Kinshasa, of course, yes. You need 2 days to join Kisangani, Kinshasa by road and so on, if it's practicable or not. Whereas, of course, all these companies can report, can have meetings and so on by the use of satellite, because the time for us to have an optical fiber going from Kinshasa to Kisangani and Lubumbashi and so on, it's not so easy. It's a lot of investment, whereas it's very quick by satellite to find some options while trying to secure and have some other means. So we encourage very hardly this public-private partnership and this B2B, but B2C and OC. We need this. I think it's a new way. That's why we are speaking in ITU of a collaborative regulation now. Mm-hmm. The 5G in the regulation is collaborative regulation, which is putting all the stakeholders together and to have a better regulation and a better profit from the companies operating, but also for the users with a very nice affordability.
Thank you. So I see some questions on the chat about rain fade, about regulation. We will come to those in a second. But Jean-Jacques, you mentioned a couple of important points then. You mentioned 5G, you mentioned regulation, you mentioned collaboration. Look, with this pandemic, there is a very clear realization that connectivity can be life-changing. John, do you believe that policy agendas in Africa will change because of this? And the second part of my question to you is, do you think it's possible to aim for 5G in Africa without neglecting the unserved areas?
That's quite a mouthful. But let me start with where Jean-Jacques left. I think there's a sense in which people must work together to achieve results collaboratively. And the biggest single impediment, I think, to satellite, as a form of connectivity in Africa, and indeed probably other ICTs, but we see it more in the satellite industry, is at a policy and regulatory level, which then requires, collaboration in terms of frameworks that we develop between governments and industry. And so talking of challenges, fiscal policy measures that have been taken by our governments generally tend to see us perceiving, and indeed it's true, that satellite costs and satellite, terminal prices and equipment seen as much dearer and costly for purposes of ensuring connectivity. And I think there's a great sense in which industry and government should collaborate to ensure that measures, fiscal or otherwise, that are taken are geared towards ensuring that connectivity is the primary issue. I mean, the satellite industry is in it for business, but there can't be business without connectivity. And so in ensuring that there's mass connectivity, then one gets the sort of economies of scale that would then ensure that prices are pushed down for terminals, for equipment that are needed. So in a sense, collaboration is the key thing here. Now, in terms of whether as a result of COVID, we are likely to see changes in policy. Indeed, we at the ATU are already working with industry, with governments to develop a common sort of white paper recommendation or guidelines, if you like, that will see that satellite, I mean, as we grew up, I've told you this before, Aarti, we thought of satellite as something high up in space, not within reach of earthlings. And so there's a sense in which we need to bring satellite to our level. The so-called terrestrial links all over Africa cannot survive without satellites, because that's the backhaul that most of them use. And so there's a sense in which governments in Africa are increasingly realizing that policy changes towards a sort of ubiquitous connectivity involving the satellite industry is important. And so to answer your question, I think, yes, there's a clear policy shift. We've seen a number of policies in a couple of African countries that are geared towards ensuring that satellite is internalized, is implemented as part and parcel of an integrated connectivity framework, and I think that's good for industry. But yes, because of COVID and indeed the realization that satellite is an integral part of the entire connectivity ecosystem, I think there'll be clear policy shifts to ensure that this encouragement of more penetration of satellite terminals in Africa. Over to you.
Thank you for that. That's very good. So let's come to some of the questions. Daniel, maybe you can take this one. We know that Africa relies on C-band for many satellite services because the signal is very robust, and that's important when you think about the heavy rainfall that you see in Africa. And I know SES does provide a lot of C-band services in Africa. You're a major provider of them there. But in DRC, you have deployed an alternative, an innovative Ka-band service. How did you make this work? Because we know that Ka-band is not quite as robust as C-band when it comes to rain. So how did you find a solution for that?
Yes, thank you, Aarti. Yeah, indeed, that is true. In essence, all wireless connections are susceptible to rain fade, C-band less than others, and Ka, because of the high frequencies in which it's operate, yes, it's very susceptible to rain, but we have found technological solutions that actually help us mitigate significantly the rain fade issue. So what we did, we went and did an historical and statistical survey of the weather in DRC, especially in Kinshasa. We analyzed the rain patterns, the size of rain cells, the rain density. And after we did that, we were able to come up with a technological solution, which is called diversity, by which we install two terminals apart one of the other at the distance of 20-30 kilometers. We therefore have two different paths to the satellite, and we assume that when in one terminal it's raining, in the other not. And actually it works like that. So we have been able to reach a fabulous availability of 99.9 using our diversity. So it actually it works as a fiber, or sometimes even with a higher availability. So a technological solution was found and implemented. everybody was very happy with that.
Brilliant, thank you. Amir, do you want to come in on that? I mean, I think it's
Yeah.
great how your two companies work together to measure the distance between clouds. This is innovation almost at a different level now.
What we did together, Gilat Telecom launched the SD-WAN Max last year or 2 years ago. And together with the SD-WAN, it's a new technology that knows how to facilitate or optimize the network in both sides, meaning that if you have more than one station and you need to optimize it, then anytime that there's a failover, then it's automatically moved to the other station. So by using this technology together with the redundant teleport, the user experience is not affected at all. So that's why we managed together to keep the SLA very high on 5 nines.
Okay. So look, this session was meant to be as much about resilience as it was about digital divide. And SES made the headlines a few months ago because of internet connectivity literally being cut. Amir, can you tell us something about that? It's hard for us to imagine that 1 minute you have internet and the next minute you don't. How do you overcome this issue? How long does it take to restore connectivity? How did you do it in these circumstances?
So last January, there was a major cable cut on the Atlantic Sea facing Europe. It's one of the biggest cable called WAX. And this cable cut caused an immediate drop of data and call more than 50% of the traffic of the international calls and data, which affect immediately on the mobile operators. So the mobile operator needed a very fast and reliable solution. So our solution together with SES, we have the SD-WAN connected to the fiber and connected to the satellite. And once there was the cable cut, then automatically all the traffic moved into the O3B services. And if the customer wants us to upgrade, then all we need to do is only logical upgrade. And that's why we are able to give him more than 3 gig in 1 day. In less than 1 day, we give him 3 gig.
Wow.
To overcome his a lack of capacity.
Wow, that's incredible. Yeah. And how often do these things happen?
There is a lot of investment on fiber lately on the Africa continent, but still DRC, Niger, Chad, Central Africa Republic are landlocked. So they are dependent on the other country and dependent on the cable. So if there's a cable cut along the way, they are cut off. So it's happened quite, I don't want to say quite a lot, but it's happened once a quarter, and it's affecting immediately on the capacity.
Right. Okay. So let's go back to some of the questions that we've been receiving. We had one question asking about the plans to expand fiber and 3G in Africa. Now, Amir, you just said there's a lot of investment going into this, but surely it's going to take so long, especially in a post-COVID economy. I mean, I know the attention is very much there to bring 5G even to Africa and so on. But is it justifiable given the realization that we've just had? And, I was participating in an event a short while ago, and Daniel Obam from Kenya, he said, we can celebrate what we've done with the connectivity during COVID all day. We can give so many examples of how we've done great things with it. But what we're not talking about is the elephant in the room and all of those people the kids who may have been going to a connected school in Kenya, but who are now at home because the schools are shut and they don't have online classes at home because there is no connectivity there. So, the investment into fiber and the prospects for 5G, how do you balance that for the need for connectivity right now? I'm going to open the floor. Who wants to take that question? Raise your hand, guys, one of you. Ale, John, say something.
I don't know whether I understand the question. If you can just repeat it. Sorry.
I'm just wondering, how do we balance the drive towards bringing 5G to Africa and the investment demands of fiber for Africa with the need to connect people as fast as possible, as we have seen with the pandemic situation?
I think that those three issues that you've talked about are not mutually exclusive. One at the policy level, one sees necessary interventions because our levels of appreciating technology are certainly different. There are needs based on the activities that are happening or in rural areas. There are industrial needs. There are 5G needs in metropolis and stuff like that. So one can't say that we should not get into 5G technology or high fiber capacity, for example, because the basic 3G or 2G is still out of reach or not. There is no access for that sort of technology in large swaths of Africa, as indeed it's the case in some countries. But so for me, I see a mix of all these technologies, which is what 5G in any case is about. And so one cannot talk of 5G and say we are going to abandon 3G or we are going to abandon the need for more rapid, faster terrestrial connectivity. So one needs to have a policy framework that has a mix of the needs of various regions, the needs of various communities, the needs of various industries, the needs of various schools in terms of high capacity, perhaps not very high capacity, and to integrate this in an entire development plan for ICT in a country. So they are not mutually exclusive, as I would say. We can't say that since there are places in Africa that still don't have 2G, we don't need to talk about 5G, for example. Thank you.
Got it. Okay. Amir, you wanted to say something on this as well?
Yes, I think that the cellular connectivity has a huge impact on what's going to happen in the next couple of years. But what we need to do is a backhauling, to take the cellular backhauling, meaning that you connect your users from home instead of schools with the cellular and give them to connectivity up to the local teleport, the local station of the satellite. They have to work together. And this, I think, what's going to happen in the next, with the 4G or the 3G and the 5G, that's going to be joint venture because, the cellular is dependent on the connectivity outside. So the cellular backhauling from home to the teleport, this is what we're going to see. Little modems of cellulars going home, secured one, and telemedicine, e-learning, everything will be like that instead of putting the satellite itself. They will work together.
Okay. Jean-Jacques, let me bring you in. There was a question for you regarding the connectivity that you mentioned. Why is satellite a better solution than cellular, covering well Africa, about 800 million cellular subscribers in Africa?
Yeah, but as Amir was saying, the cellular network, if you are in a country, you have different level of connectivity. In the capital, in the major cities, you can be connected in 4G. So there, if you have the equipment, the device, and the handset which can match this technology, you can have your internet and so on. But in the other regions where you have just 2G or 3G connectivity and so on, you need the transmission. The transmission is made whether via these cables and to address internet and to the connectivity or via satellite. So what Amir was saying that, of course, yes, if you are in a rural region and you have a downlink satellite providing with enough bandwidth for that, you should install a wireless network there to use the satellite link for transmitting and accessing the internet while you are using your phone just to access internet and so on. Yeah. And of course, having 800 billion users, million users in Africa, that's it. But now, of course, if you can send SMS, you can make a call, but it's not easy to make any application, learning or medicine with this 2G phone. So we need to complete. Where we have some networks, I've installed this kind of network in Rwanda. So at the border with Burundi, of course, optical fiber is coming there and so on, but all the districts are linked and are accessing internet in Rwanda, which is a landlocked country, like the project I was trying to to launch in Kinshasa. Kinshasa, if we have a satellite coming there, the Earth station is not for so far and so on, but you need a wireless loop around Kinshasa. You need wireless network to address all the schools, all the districts, and all the health centers connected. Because of course now, if you say you are installing an Earth station in a school, but now the people are at home, they are not at the school, who is going to provide the link from home to the station, the Earth station installed in a school or in a district? So you need, yes, of course, to complete all these networks together to find, and that's what I'm saying to you, everyone has to come on board with a practical, pragmatic solutions of connectivity. It's not to say that satellite is better, mobile is better, no. Sometimes you can use satellite, sometimes you have to use optical fiber, but when you have a problem with this optical fiber, and it's the case actually, I'm speaking to you, Ethiopia is cut since more than four days. No internet at all. We cannot work with our regional office in Addis Abeba. It has been established only yesterday, but if you have a backhaul, satellite backhaul, which is enough for emergency telecom issues like connectivity of the government, of the ONGs, NGOs, and humanitarian actions, and the United Nations, and so on, with the respective headquarters, yes, you can use it. As you see, we have been 1 week without any connection. Impossible to work with Ethiopia.
Yeah. Daniel, can you come in on this?
Yes, I would like to emphasize on what Jean-Jacques said. I don't think that satellite and cellular are competing technologies, but rather they are complementing technologies. One doesn't replace the other, but one needs the other. Cellular needs a satellite or fiber, and vice versa. A cellular network doesn't only provide voice. Today, it provides more data. And in order to do that, a cellular network needs a connection to the internet. So they need either satellite, or they need fiber, or they need some other technology. But again, they are not competing technologies. They are technologies that are interlaced one with the other. And the better the connectivity that the media can provide to cellular, the better connectivity that the customer will have. And that, for example, is one of the advantages that O3B presented in DRC to the MNOs, the possibility of a fast connectivity to internet.
Got it. Let's come to the regulatory issues, because we have a couple of questions on them. Daniel or Amir, can you tell us, did you encounter any regulatory issues in Africa? One of the questions that we received also talked about which of the technologies brings the most revenue, licensing revenue. And on that one, I want to bring John in, because I think this is a problem. I think a lot of African countries still see satellite operators and the fees that you can impose on them as a source of revenue. In fact, the greater economic return to a country is going to come from the connectivity that you enable, not from the licensing revenues. So first on how did you face any problems when you're connecting DRC, to Daniel and Amir, and then over to John on the broader issue of licensing revenues?
In regard to general Africa, I can say that in 99% of the cases, we never faced any significant difficulty in getting landing rights. Everything was okay. Specifically in regard to DRC, I will let Amir comment on that. But in essence, there were no specific issues, I think.
Okay, thank you, Daniel. So in DRC, you need a license in order to transmit the O3B services or the GEO, and we have a license, and we are working very closely with the regulatory in the last 8-9 years. And another thing is that the MNO has their own license. So once you're getting the mobile operator license, you also get the license to transmit and to use the satellite. So we are using both of the license, once with our license that we have on our teleport, and the teleport of the MNOs belongs to the mobile operator. But surely we are working very closely with the regulator and the Ministry of Communication there, and it's helping us very good. We are not facing any issue in the last 8 years.
That's good.
I think, in the last year, we are opening a new station, a new service in other cities other than Kinshasa, Bunia, Bujumbura, Kisangani, and Kolwezi, and it's with cooperation, with the license and everybody.
Great, thank you. John, can you come in on the government's attitude towards licensing and revenues, or regulators' attitude?
Thank you very much. I think we have seen a couple of what generally is called initial license fees, where for one to access a market, then the government sets certain fees for market accessibility. And I think that economists will tell you has a fairly generally acceptable negative effect. The fact being that the cost of that initial license fees is essentially the cost of doing business, and is passed to consumers. So I think for the question that was raised, I believe by René Rodin, the issue, the focus should not so much be on which of these technologies should get the highest license fees for government, but the focus should really be how can we ensure that there is ubiquitous, wide coverage of our population, of our people, of our industries, so that the services that are needed by the people are available. Through that means, then government is able to get more revenue out of fiscal policies, taxation measures on usage. And again, I recommend that they should not be so much prohibitive as to prevent people from accessing and from using this, accessing these services and using these technologies. So personally, I am not for high initial license fees or market entry fees, because that becomes a high cost capital and makes the business not to grow at a rate fast enough to ensure this ubiquitous coverage. So essentially, initially it was quite a huge problem in Africa. Increasingly, governments are realizing that yes, let's ensure that operators get in, and through usage we can then get revenues as opposed to initial license fees. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, so Amir, are you raising your hand? Did you want to comment? No. Okay. We wanted to bring in Tony from Muinda Technologies in DRC to make a comment. Tony, please, the floor is yours. Can you unmute?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Sure.
Please.
Greetings to everyone, and thank you very much for the invitation to take part in this great conversation. So just as a quick background, I'm not a satellite operator, so I'm more on the customer side. Muinda is an American-based company. We've been operational in the DRC since last year in 2019, July 2019. So just a couple comments very rapidly, if you allow me. First, on the regulatory side, right? Because there's the national agency, RENATELSAT, Réseau National Communication par Télécommunications, par Satellite. So RENATELSAT has been working tremendously to add the number of private sector operators in the satellite field, but just like telecom in general. So on the regulatory side, if there are people who are looking into the DRC as a market, being on the ground, we can tell you that regulation has been improving drastically. On another standpoint, the new government last September or October passed a new digital plan, right? Plan National du Numérique. The plan is intended to really make the environment more appealing to private sector operator, and it relies on many pillars, including infrastructure. And when we talk about infrastructure, satellite is a big chunk of that part. So there is the strategic plan. Granted, it is only a plan and it needs to be materialized, but it is a robust plan, which was not existing previously. So the environment is definitely getting better. Maybe one last point, I would say, yes, logistic is a nightmare in the DRC. We have a lot of places that are far off, that are not easily accessible. And so you cannot just extend fiber optic infrastructure in those places. So satellite is absolutely key to provide coverage in places like that. And as you can see with like Eutelsat, which has been increasing its presence in the Congo, you have other operators as well. So finally, on a user side, like my company, Moinda Technology, that does both energy access and financial inclusion, relying on internet as a way to reach customers. Clearly, we want more infrastructure, we want more access, you know, in some of the far off areas. So clearly, we need more investment in the sectors, and we need more, I would say, participation from companies like, I think it was Amir and Daniel, who already operational here in the DRC. And one very minute last point: the DRC is not a landlocked country. Okay, let me just say that. So some of you have said we're landlocked. It's a small opening in Congo Central. Yeah, Point Brazzaville. Yeah, so we have access to the ocean, and there's a big port, the Banana Port, which we've been negotiating for a very long time with other, you know, within the African Union. So that might come to pass very, very soon. So those are the few comments I wanted to make. I'm more than open to participate some more if you allow me, and I'm very involved in the sector as well.
Thank you. Thanks, Tony. I appreciate your coming in. Your comments are very valuable. It's good to hear that you're working with different technologies. Okay, we're going to come back to the discussion and the questions. I'm seeing more questions coming in on the chat. One is, what is the cost of user terminals required to receive MEO-based services from O3B? And is this a barrier or a facilitator to deploying services in rural areas? But I think it's a good question. Daniel, do you want to comment on that?
Yes. MEO technology for satellite is not a consumer product. The MEO solution that we have is something that's applied at carrier level, and the users get to use the MEO technology through other last mile technologies, for example, such as Wi-Fi or cellular in most of the cases. But it's not the case that a customer can buy a MEO terminal, install it in his home, because it is very expensive. But again, but they get to use that low latency technology by using cellular or Wi-Fi or something else.
It's acting as a gateway.
Exactly.
It's more, yeah, in more than a gateway than a user terminal. So everybody can connect to this gateway and getting the connectivity instead of everybody's getting the new VSAT or something like that. It's
right. So
this is how the K works.
You guys are raising some interesting issues here. I mean, we know that often satellite is considered as a last resort, an expensive solution. It has latency, which makes it all impossible. Yet there are so many use cases. There are so many examples, whether it's satellite backhauling for MNOs, whether it's connecting schools, whether it's enabling financial services, digital financial inclusion. There are so many examples out there. Surely these examples show that it can be done, that latency is not an issue, that the cost is not an issue. One of the questions that we've just received says that there's not enough awareness about satellite. So where is the real blocking factor in bringing this solution to that divide? In your view, what is the key blocking factor? Jean-Jacques, can I bring you in first?
First, I think for the user, all communication means should be transparent. It's not the problem of a user to know if he's connected via satellite, via optical fiber, and so on. The problem of the user is just to be connected and to get the service he's paying for. So now when you are designing this kind of networks, what I was telling before, we should bring the cheapest technology to the appropriate use of the beneficiary of the service. And of course, yes, connectivity is to be tackled depending on the need. It's not to say, okay, we are providing a village with 10 gigabits of connectivity for just one kid sending a video or something of corn plantation or something like that. No, we need to to build the applications they need. And then if a connectivity is there, because it's just not in Africa for leisure, you see. The difference between the developed countries and our world, in developing world, is that, okay, we have some basic needs. And in these basic needs, of course, you know that to have this connectivity, you can improve the agriculture sector. You can improve the income of all these small companies, small entities trying to survive daily. So this connectivity should be seen as not only a right for these people there, from the government perspective, because, you know, the regulatory agency, which is RTPC from Congo, is making a lot of efforts. I was in Kinshasa 1.5 years back to approve this new digital plan, to have a visibility and to know and try to tell the people that, okay, in 6 months they will receive some concrete administration from the government saying that they are now connected. It's politically very important also to manage these people. Not to just going there for votations when you have elections and so on. These people need to have a sustainable development. This sustainable development can be brought to them only if they are connected, if they have the minimum of connection possible for them in order to be connected and to try to improve their way of life.
Great. Okay. Who else wants to come in?
In regard to the lack of awareness and the general feeling that people in Africa might have towards satellites, I think it's a little bit of perception and old history. 10 years ago, satellite was scarce. There wasn't a lot of satellite in the continent, and it was very expensive. And today, the situation is completely different. Today, there's a lot of satellite capacity. The prices have gone down, but also new technologies have been introduced into the market. 10 years ago, the only satellite used was the geostationary satellite, providing 600 milliseconds of latency. Capacity was so expensive that people or companies could not afford to take gigabits of bandwidth. Nowadays, it is possible. Therefore, today, satellite technology in Africa is equal in quality, in price, in services to the fiber. People are still not aware of that. But on the other hand, as Jean-Jacques said, it doesn't matter. Satellite is an infrastructure, and people, you know, they need to get into the internet. They couldn't care less what they're going to use. Is it satellite? Is it fiber? That's, you know, for the companies and the regulators to decide what is going to be the most cost-effective way to get the connectivity to the population.
Great. Okay, we are in our last 2 minutes of the webinar. Amir, do you want to say one last word on the awareness? You're on mute. I mean, you're in between the satellite and the terrestrial, so I think it's, you know, it's good.
I think
go ahead, Amir.
again, the SD-WAN is entering Africa right now, and it's a very cost-effective technology and suitable for the Africa. And together with satellite and other technology, it could be, do a lot of awareness and a very, you know, a very optimal solution for customers. So
Great.
remember the SD-WAN.
Okay, John.
I think in as much as, you know, there needs to be seamless connectivity between whatever terminals or technologies that we use, perception is real. And perception brings people's attitudes towards a given technology and event. And so I think there's an increasing need that we bring satellite to the level of earthling so that people understand it, especially at the level of policymakers, so that we know that 10, 20 years ago it was expensive, it was hardly available, but now it is available. And, you know, not so much of an alternative technology, but a complementary technology to the terrestrial links that we have. Thank you very much.
Yes.
Thank you, John. Okay, guys, we're going to wrap up. Already this webinar has allowed us to raise a little bit of awareness. We couldn't have done it without your help. Thank you so much to you, and thank you the participants for joining. Our next Global Challenges Satellite Answers webinar is going to take place on the 23rd at 12 noon. Please follow us on Twitter and on LinkedIn and subscribe to our newsletter to be informed about our future events. Thank you all for participating today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Aarti,
Bye.
thank you very